Hello and welcome to Linking Out Loud. I'm Rachel McHugh and today I'm here with Ria Wolstenholme, who is a freelance journalist and content writer, and we are going to be chatting about freelance journalism and what journalists wish that PRs knew about their work. So thank you very much for joining me, Ria.
No worries, thank you for having me.
As always, I'd like to start with a bit of an introduction. So if you could give us a bit of background about yourself and what you do.
Sure, so it's quite varied. I started my career as a broadcast journalist. I'm from Jersey in the Channel Islands, so I worked as a radio broadcaster for a couple of years. I then moved to London and started freelancing, unsuccessfully, might I add. Ended up working in TV for a short amount of time and then was really craving a career change. I was kind of sick of doing newsroom shifts and working weekends. Started to work for a couple of PR agencies for a number of years, and then I went freelance again as a journalist, and it's been successful this time.
Nice, so far so good.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned that you have some experience in PR on the other side.
Yes.
So I do want to chat a little bit about that because it's quite interesting to see somebody who's done both sides of the coin of the PR world. How do you feel, or do you feel like your PR experience has influenced your journalism and vice versa?
Yeah, I remember starting in agency life, and I'd had friends that worked in PR before and told me about, there are some horror stories about different agencies out there and how cutthroat it can be, how long the hours can be and how difficult the work was. But I felt really comfortable walking in, that I knew how to approach journalists, and that if they're not speaking to me on the phone, it is because they're busy most of the time. And it gave me a bit of a leg up, I think, starting off in that world, knowing what a journalist wanted to hear. It was still difficult and I still got pushed back, like you always do. But yeah, I think it really helped. And on the flip side, being a freelancer now, I kind of wear both hats simultaneously. I'm still getting approached by PRs to do certain things and write certain things. So then I'm acting as a bit of a middleman between PRs and editors. So I have to kind of mix the two worlds together quite a lot, actually. So it does really help.
Yeah, I think there can be a bit of a divide sometimes between PRs and what they're doing and journalists and what they're doing. Even though they communicate so frequently, you might get tens of emails a day from a PR, but they don't quite fully get always what it is that you're doing, what you're able to do and that sort of thing. So it's nice not only to have that understanding, but to actually have lived in both roles and worked on both sides and I guess really understand what both is trying to achieve. In that vein, is there something from either of your roles that you wish that the other knew, something that maybe journalists wish that PRs knew?
Yeah, I think a good example of this would be that I've worked with some people in the past that didn't understand the different roles in a newsroom. And it's totally understandable. If you've not been in a newsroom, you don't understand that a producer isn't going to be someone that's commissioning work. I once got told to call the art director of a national magazine to pitch a story to them, and it was difficult to speak to someone senior and be like, they're just not going to want to listen to me because that's not their role. So I think there needs to be more of a crossover between the newsrooms and publishing houses and the PR world, of understanding who you're talking to and what they actually do. Because I think there is a bit of smoke and mirrors and kind of what a journalist does and what that role entails, but that I think holds a lot of people back a lot of the time, because if you're constantly asking the wrong people for the wrong things, you're gonna keep getting a no. I think vice versa. Like, I think as a PR, I'm sure many people do, I experienced a lot of rudeness from journalists, and I felt really embarrassed as a previous journalist that this is how people were speaking to one another. I just think there's no need for that. I understand that if you've had a stressful day, I've had them myself, where you're getting calls and emails and you just don't want to respond. But I just think you never know where your professional life is going to take you. And I think that burning bridges in that way is just a very, very kind of clumsy way to do it.
Yeah, true. Yeah. I think whatever you do, there'll always be somebody in any line of work that just is a bit rude when they email. I remember one time, this was very early in my career, I must confess, or preface this by saying, but I had accidentally scheduled an email to somebody that had already written the story, and this went back and forth explaining this, and then his final reply to me was just, seriously? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. And I was like, never mind. I guess I won't be getting any more coverage from you.
But that's the thing, you have to make those mistakes because you still remember it now, right? So you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that one again.
Yeah, always, check in all avenues if they've covered the story. I think it was a case of like, I had searched to see if the story had been written anywhere and it didn't come up when I searched for it, and that was like my last check. Whereas now I'm like, okay, look on the websites, they've opened the email a few times, let me see if they've actually published it. I'm not sure why it didn't come up, but it didn't, and then there you go, lesson learned. So yeah, I think there's definitely a few things that we can learn from that. So I guess generally speaking, you find that it's been helpful that you have this experience on both sides.
Yeah, definitely. I think it also, when you're speaking to the right people or in the right line of work and speaking to the right editors or equally directors and agencies, they respected the fact that I had prior experience and knew what I was talking about. It's hard to kind of find your voice in that, especially when you're like, in your 20s, navigating those different fields and going into a brand new, arena that you haven't been a part of before. Having someone take me seriously and be like, oh, Rhea does know the difference between an editor and a producer, so we should listen to her. That's always a very affirming thing that I think is really important to keep in mind. And
useful skills to have. And it's not always that obvious. Like sometimes the editor of a publication might, if it's a smaller one, write all the stories, and sometimes it might just be them. But in another publication, there might be an editor who doesn't do any of the writing, or the people that you actually want to contact who might write up the story are the staff writers or a deputy editor, so it can be helpful for PRs as well. Like if people that use databases, for example, those are up to date and they actually say what someone does, just to don't avoid being contacted by somebody that you don't want to hear from. So I guess it goes both ways. What would you say drew you back to journalism after your stint in PR?
I think my time in PR taught me a lot. It made me realise that I had a lot more transferable skills than I'd realised. I studied multimedia journalism at university at Bournemouth Uni, and I loved my time there, and being able to kind of work across TV, radio, traditional print and digital media made me realise there was so much I could go out there and do. And working in radio for my 2 years at the BBC was I'm still so grateful for that opportunity, because it gave me so much confidence at a young age that I did know what I was doing and I was really capable. But working in a newsroom environment and doing shift work especially, it does wear you down quite quickly. And no matter, I think, how young or hungry you are, you do get, when I was having to say no to plans over a weekend to friends because I was, there at 8 a.m. and writing cues and being a producer, it didn't feel very fulfilling anymore in the same way. And I wanted to still stay in that industry that was creative and looking at storytelling and using my words and those kind of positive attributes and skills I had. And PR just seemed like a really normal, easy fit for me. I'd had a few friends that had moved over to PR from journalism as well, and they were saying how much the work-life balance had improved, that their skills had become so much stronger since. So I just thought, why not?
Yeah. Sometimes when you're a junior PR, or even if you've worked in PR for a while and don't always have that luxury of speaking to somebody who works in journalism, you don't always get that that insight. I don't know, do you get people or do you get PRs taking you out for lunch or coffee that much? Is that still much of a thing?
Yeah, and especially when I started freelancing again, I was like, I need to build my own network now. I can't just rely on or kind of poach previous connections. People are still very, very keen to get face-to-face, and it makes such a big difference when you meet someone who has been emailing you sometimes for months, and then you have that face-to-face interaction. Even if you end that meeting and thinking, you know what, we actually just don't align, your clients aren't something that is going to work with my line of kind of writing, at least you know now, and in the future something might come up. And that's definitely, I've got a track record to prove that I've got PR contacts that I still go to regularly to talk about things or see if they've got anything for me, and vice versa. They'll always send stuff, and I'm always going to be very try and be as consistent in my replies and get back to them and be like, you know what, thank you so much, it's not one for me right now, but I'll keep you posted. That's been a big lesson for me, that I knew working in agency that no reply was worse than a no most of the time, because it's kind of constantly throwing it out into the ether and getting no response. You don't know if it's right, you don't know if you're doing something wrong. So I've tried to do that as much as I can, that if something comes my way that is in line with what I write about and is actually really relevant, just not correct for that timing, I'll always let the PR know, because I just think it's like the least I can do. But on the flip side, I do also get approached with things that is just like so far out of my scope of writing that I'm like, did we do any Googling? Google is free. It's there.
We've all got the internet, guys, so just check.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that kind of thing, you just think like, just spend that extra time doing the research, because you were never going to cover it, so don't bother sending it if you know that it's not the right thing. You have a website, but lots of people have details on things like Rocks Hill or Response Source about the things that, or just look and Google their name and you'll see the kind of topics that they're actually covering. I spoke to a health and consumer affairs journalist for this podcast, actually, Rosie Taylor, and we were talking about how health can be a lot of different things. Like you might be, so in her case, it's like a lot about health policy and that sort of thing. And that journalist isn't going to want to cover your health and wellness, how to get 8 hours of sleep a night article, so you do have to check those things. So some of it should be common sense, but there are some things that I think a lot of people can gain just from having that communication with a journalist that you might not realize otherwise. Just got to ask sometimes. That was kind of the purpose of this podcast, I guess, is to share like some of those things that are easy to know, but you just have to hear it one time and then you remember it forever. Like whatever, make sure you tailor your press releases, or don't send it on a bank holiday because no one's gonna get it, kind of thing.
Exactly.
So now, as a freelancer, just in general, what are some of the topics that you love to write about? What are your favorite kinds of stories to put together?
It's interesting because I think I'm very different in terms of what my freelance work actually entails. I do a lot of contracted work for other clients, but I write across such a variety of subjects. Not all of them are PR adjacent most of the time, as in like I actually can't use press or anything like that from agencies in there. But I love writing the fashion work I do for Glamour, like the fashion. I've started writing a bit of wellness stuff for them as well. That relationship's been going on for the same amount of time I've been a freelancer, and it's just so much fun. Like I really enjoy having that side of my like creative brain come out, and something a bit more kind of less strenuous. Like it's still hard work, but I write for bbc.com for the program partnerships, which is a whole separate entity, but that's, I'm writing a lot about global health and sustainability and really serious, laborious topics where I'm interviewing sometimes 6-7 people at a time for one piece. So having that side of my working brain do that, and then be able to do the Glamour work, and then in between pitch ideas, like I've written a couple of pieces for Mashable on dating, and that's because that's just such a personal interest for me. Like I love writing about love and finding love and like modern romance. I find it fascinating. So I'm trying to kind of, I guess, carve that as a niche, but I also just think I get asked a lot like what my niche is, what my avenue is, and I don't believe you have to have one to be a good writer. I actually think sometimes that having a broader scope of subjects that you cover makes you more inclined to ask different questions that people might not have thought about when you're covering something new or something different. And it also really makes you like flex those muscles that you've not had to use before. Like when I started writing about fashion, I remember speaking to my editor and be like, I've never written about this before. Like, what if I don't know how to do it right? And she was like, well, just try it. Like you're never going to know until you try it. So I always try and kind of put it across that way, that I like wearing multiple hats, and it keeps me on my toes.
Yeah,
in the best
for sure.
way.
Because obviously you're a strong writer,
Thank
but
you.
as a human, you have so many interests. Like nobody ever just says like, oh, what are you into? Oh, I'm only into cooking and that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe you like that, but you've mentioned you love writing about like love, which is such like a lovely niche. And you've got a Substack newsletter and you like to write about that, but maybe you love sports as well, and you love movies and television. Like people have so many different interests, and if you're able to write, there's no reason that you wouldn't be able to write about all of them, provided somebody gives you those opportunities, or you find those opportunities. So yeah, I think everyone has the capacity to have lots of different hats, and it's nice that as a freelancer, hopefully you get to wear most of them, at least in some capacity. When it comes to working with someone like Glamour, how much of the content or how many of the topics would they put forward versus you just suggest off your own back?
So it's very organic. I can't say too much about that contractually, but it is a very organic relationship in the fact that because we have that rapport now, I'll be approached where I'm being commissioned to write something specific. But then equally, they're always very open to hearing my ideas and my takes on like latest trends or what I've spotted, something that we could work on together. So it varies, but it's very collaborative, which I think is why it's worked so well for so long now, because they're just such a wonderful team to work with. They're just so laid back in the best way, but like so supportive as well. You know, I got invited along to the Glamour Women of the Year Awards.
Nice.
Last year, and that was such a pinch me moment, like rolling up to this like tremendous building full of like all these incredible women and getting to go to like the after party, and it was like, oh, this is our freelancer Rhea, like she's basically part of the team, and it was like, oh, this is so sweet.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and I don't think you get that with many teams, and I feel very lucky to have like built that relationship from where it started to where it is now, for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so lovely.
Yeah.
You sort of mentioned identifying trends and things there. When it comes to identifying trends or topics of your own, how do you go about that? Where do you source inspiration from? And does much of it come from PR?
You know what? I think when I get the right PR, it will like kind of make me go and look further. So, for instance, a good example is I've got a relationship with like the PR team that look after Hinge in the UK. So when they send through data and sources, it piques my interest because they've tapped into something that they know I'm interested in anyway. And going out and doing that further research and seeing what other people are writing about it always makes me think about how I could write something in a new vein. So yeah, sometimes PR does come through and it really kind of hits that right nerve. But I would say generally, honestly, TikTok is such a huge source of information now, because you can spot something that's about to get big a lot of the time, or something where a topic is consistently coming up and you're like, well, someone's going to be Googling that because they've seen that video and they want to learn more about it, or they want to educate themselves more. Like, I don't have exact figures at all, but I know that like the majority of Gen Z get their general news and information from TikTok, Snapchat, not even Instagram anymore. So keeping your finger on the pulse of those channels is so important when you're freelancing, because you need to know what the majority want to hear about a lot of the time to get those like reactive pitches in, the same way you would with PR. I think it's so overlapping when you're a freelancer, because I don't have an editorial team behind me to have meetings with every Monday and be like, right, what did you read about this weekend? What should we tackle this week? You know, it's very much a one-woman band over here. So, yeah, I kind of like joke around when I'm scrolling on TikTok that I'm like, it's research.
I'm working.
Yeah.
Please don't interrupt me.
Exactly.
I know. I often go, oh, I need to delete TikTok because my screen time is so bad. And then I think, I need it for work.
Yeah.
How will I know what the latest trend is and that sort of thing? And now you see a lot of the time articles about XYZ, the latest TikTok trend. And if you're on TikTok, then you'll just get there first and you'll know about it first. So yeah, I probably don't use it as much for work as I say that I do, but I do feel like it's nice to know. It keeps me in tune with, keeps me young.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely, yeah. I think that like that side of things is so important, but also just like reading publications you wouldn't usually read as a writer is really important in my mind. I do understand that there's so much politics around what you read these days, but I think that for what I like to read and write about, if I'm not reading a variety of publications, then I'm only kind of staying in my own echo chamber.
Yeah.
Which means that you're always going to write in a slightly biased way. And I think trying to hear both sides as much as you can, if it is something that maybe is going to be divisive as a topic, or something that might be unpopular, or a brand new thought, a thought piece that you might want to put forward, I think that is really important, to hear as many voices as possible before you make your own judgment and then put pen to paper.
Yeah, I like that. And I think probably as PRs as well, that's probably something we should do or do more of potentially, just reading news from different outlets.
Absolutely.
Because that's ultimately who you're trying to get in front of. So what are they writing about? Who are they writing for? And that sort of thing. How is that changing? So it's important to stay on top of those sorts of things.
Yeah,
do you subscribe to any newsletters or anything like that as a source?
I'm very big on Substack. It's like my safe space. It's kind of like if if Pinterest and the good side of Tumblr had a little internet baby, and it's just like beautiful pictures and people's like amazing writing and telling stories without all the links and ads and, you know, people pushing things. And I do subscribe to a lot of newsletters. One that I love is Emma Gannon. She's an author. She wrote the multi-hyphen method, basically talking about kind of like the new age of workers, that you don't have to be one thing. You know, you don't have to just be a writer. You know, I'm not just a journalist. I write content and I write other things and I consult, and I still kind of dip my toe into PR from time to time. Like, I can do all those things and it can still be one job in itself.
Yeah.
And she's fantastic. She's such a great example of how you can take a creative outlet that is worthy of being called a job and make really good money out of it, and really provide something that's extremely useful for everyone at the same time. I think there's still like a bit of a, how do I put this? There's still a lot of judgment around people having a creative job. You know, if you're a hedge fund manager, it's like, oh yeah, they work in hedge funds. If you're a creative consultant, it's like they're a creative consultant. No one really takes it seriously still, and I still get that. You know, some people like to poke fun. They're like, oh, you still writing? And I'm like, I'm making plenty of money writing. Thanks. Yeah, it is a job. So yeah, she's a fantastic newsletter to subscribe to. But a lot of my subscriptions did fall by the wayside. I give it a chance for a bit. I am that person that uses the free trial and I'm like, you know what, I haven't actually reached for that, so I'm not going to bother continuing. I think my only subscription I have outstanding still is the New York Times. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So anyone listening, those are ones to check out. And that multi-hyphenate method that you kind of touched on there kind of links back to what we talked about a bit before, like as a journalist being able to have all these different hats, and even as a PR, and I suppose very similar to with journalism, you are doing so many things. Like, it's one job, it's one paycheck, but you're writing content, you're maybe creating visuals, you're doing research, you're analysing data. It's all of these different things that are in one, and you know, you are capable of doing all. That's just part of the job.
Exactly. Yeah.
So thinking about PR then, do you get a lot of PR content?
Yes.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
What's your inbox like?
It's crazy. I am very meticulous with my inbox, though. I really don't like going to bed with unread emails.
Oh my God, you'd hate my inbox.
I probably would, yeah. It gives me so much anxiety because I've missed stuff before that's like important. So it's just built in now. I need to check it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do get a lot of press sent my way, and it's usually when it'll always be around the time where something has just gone live. And obviously on Glamour, they're very generous and they link like everything I have, but it does quite clearly say that I'm a freelancer. Not everyone reads that part, which is a shame, but I do get a lot of content through on like a weekly basis. So I always, and again, this going back to when we're talking about kind of meeting, you know, PR in person, that's so important because I do always say, I'm like, please follow up. Like, please send me a polite chase, because most of the time I'm like, oh gosh, I needed to reply to that. Thank you so much. That's fine. But there is a very fine line between, you know, someone sending some like stats through or something that's timely, something that is more reactive and they need something. Like, totally get that. I understand that sell-ins are really tough and really stressful when you're like, have a very strict deadline to them. So I always kind of understand being chased for that. But when I'm chased meticulously for things that aren't anything to do with what I do write about, it does put a bit of a bad taste in your mouth, which is such a shame, because I know that everyone's just trying to like do their best. But if I get like a hi there, me again, like I do have a name.
Yes.
You know, I am right. It's right there. You're using my personal email address that is for work, but like it says my full name in there and we're still not making like a basic introduction. I do think that is quite lazy, to be honest, which is a shame.
Just a bit of courtesy.
Yeah.
And I think there's a balance, right? Because as you say, you go through your whole inbox, but not every journalist will.
No.
And so it is plausible that people will miss things.
Absolutely.
And if you have like a really juicy second bit of data or information that you want to add and think maybe this is the thing that actually is going to inspire you to then write that story, cool, go for it. But just like endless emails that just say, in case you missed this, it might not work. Sometimes it does, which I think is why people still do it, because sometimes
it does definitely
they'll just catch you
work
on the day that you think, oh, I did mean to reply that and I forgot, or you hadn't opened the previous email and now you're looking at this one. So it's not like a failed method, but it's not as desirable potentially as people think. So yeah, I think just use your follow-ups wisely.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. And also just like, if you do get to meet in person, there is no harm being like, by the way, how do you feel about chasers?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with asking those questions, because 9 times out of 10, someone will just give you their honest answer. One person might be like, you know what, if you give me a chaser, I just won't respond.
Yeah.
That's going to annoy me. Fine, then you know how to deal with that journalist, that writer, whoever it is that you're speaking to. If there's someone like me that's like, you know what, I am meticulous, but I forget. Please send me your follow-up if I haven't replied in a week. Fine. But yeah, it's when it's back-to-back, day after day, that's when it gets a bit much.
Yeah.
It's like, it's clogged up enough.
Yeah, I'm trying to clear my inbox. Stop sending me more.
Exactly.
So we've got follow-ups or needless follow-ups.
Yes.
What else would you say are your pet peeves when it comes to PR or frustrations?
I think if it's long, this is just my take, if it's longer than 3 paragraphs, or if it's a 3-paragraph email and then an entire press release that is like, looks like about 1,000 words, I'm just not reading it. Like, and I know how much time and effort has gone into it, and I do feel bad, but I'm like, right, the headline's not grabbed me, your first 2 paragraphs haven't grabbed me, I still don't know what the story's about, I'm not spending the rest of my day figuring it out. Links as well, the amount of times I get sent data or something and there's no attributes, and I'm like, well, how do I know that's real? Because if I go to an editor with data, the first thing they're going to say is, and?
Yeah.
Who said that? Where's that come from? How do we know it's legit? Because everything falls back on us. And I think that's, especially as a freelancer, you know, if I'm putting something forward, they don't have like a full team fact checking for me. I have to do the fact checking, and I work with an editor, and they're like, right, where are your sources? You need links to it. So as much as it might sound really interesting and your data might prove that your story is like cohesive and right for me, there's still so much more behind the scenes that I'm going to have to chase you up for. So like, put it all out there in front. I know that there's, you know, from my experience, like an agency, I know that there's some data you can't like share for a multitude of reasons, but at least give something. So yeah, I think that's my red flag, is kind of like giving all of this text with no real information.
Yeah.
That's such a pet peeve.
Yeah, for sure. If it says, according to a recent study, and you think, okay, what study?
It's like, okay, I could be a study. I'll put a study on, that's fine.
You know, just give me a link, or like just a little asterisk and say where you got it from, or who the organization is and where I can find it. Because the more steps it's going to take you to getting to a finished story, the more hurdles there are at which you might fall over and think, I'm not going to bother writing this story anymore. So
absolutely,
yeah, I guess as PRs, it's our job to make sure that not only is it an interesting story, but you, as the next person in the chain, has everything you need to be able to write it up. I wanted to ask you, we've kind of started to touch on it already, but what your ideal press release might look like, or your ideal pitch. So make sure you got your links in there, and that all your sources are included. Is there anything else that you love when people include, or that you think, why have you bothered including that, nor needs that, that sort of thing?
I think I'll start with the positive. So like a good headline that isn't, you know, bait headline. In your subject line. If you're saying pitch, breaking news, or brand new, like, I'm just not going to click on it. It looks like spam. It really does. Nothing's, and with all due respect, if it's not on the TV that I've got on the background with the rolling news and nothing's breaking, and you're sending me an email saying, breaking news, this new skincare is like taking over the industry, it's too gimmicky for me. I'm not into it.
It's also not breaking news.
No,
I'm sorry.
Exactly. Like, you know, I do like some playing around with language. I think it can be really clever, but I also think most of the time it's a bit of a waste of time. Again, like I said, I think that the longer, if I have to scroll more than like once through your email, it's too long.
Okay. Is that including a press release?
So I actually prefer it when a press release is attached as a PDF.
Interesting.
I don't know, again, personal preference, but I think when it's like in such a big bulk of the email, it's too much to read quickly. A lot of the time I'm checking emails on my phones as well. So if it's, sometimes it doesn't come out right, or the text looks weird, or the boxes aren't aligned, and like the picture you put in hasn't loaded properly, and it just looks spammy again.
Here's a question for you based on that.
Sure, yeah.
Do you care if there's like an image there? So sometimes you'll have a press release and there's like a header image.
It depends. If it's a product, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Because if I'm talking about a product, then I need to know what it looks like first. Apart from that, no. Okay. I really don't need the visual for the story. If it's like an interviewee, like an image is nice to put a face to a name. But again, if you've linked them properly, I can go and have a look at them myself.
Yeah.
Again, it just clogs up the feed, in my view. But yeah, I think the ideal press release is like maybe 4 or 5 paragraphs. Have like a quote's always really nice. If you've got case studies as well. Tell me straight away if you've got people that are ready to talk. Yeah. I think that's a big time saver. Like, here's my story. Here's what it's about. Here's some relevance as to why it needs to be talked about in this month, 3 months, this year, whatever it may be. Here's someone you can talk to straight away, and here's attached the press release with more information. Yeah. Ideal.
Keep it simple.
Yeah. Like that, because all of those like additional steps that you put at the end of like, here's a quote from X who can speak about X. We also have these people available. Here are their links. That is so much research time you've taken off my shoulders now that I can then go away. Because I also think, just to caveat all this, like, it's important to know that because I'm freelance, I'm not staff, so I'm not just forwarding that to an editor. I've then got to pitch it myself as a relevant story that I should be writing. There's hundreds and thousands of freelance writers in London alone, let alone the rest of the country and the rest of the world, who are still pitching to everyone. I also need to captivate an editor's attention in my own way as a journalist. So the more information you can give me up front, then I can kind of refashion it into how I know an editor's going to want to look at it, and then we can get somewhere with it. Whereas if I've just got walls of text, I'm not going to get through it. Yeah. And I feel I genuinely really feel bad sometimes where I'm like, I'm so sorry, I'm just not reading that. Because I know how much time goes into it, but it does, it makes the whole process so much longer, and I like, time is money. Yeah, for sure. Maybe that's your like PR past. Yeah. Making you feel like I get how much effort you put into this. Bad. Yeah. And sometimes you don't realise, you don't think how similar it is being a PR and being a freelance journalist. Yeah. Because you still have to do the same thing. You're still pitching. Like, that's not just the end, you know? Yeah. Do you often write stories up in advance and then say, hey, here's my story, do you want it? Or do you say, this is what I want to write about, should I write this up? I've never had an experience where I've sent a story ahead of time. Maybe this is... Again, I don't want to teach anyone to like suck eggs here per se, but like, it's the process usually goes how I, in my realm of work anyway, that I come up with a story idea, I do some research around it, I put my links in and put everything else in, I pitch it out to an editor, they tell me if they want it or not. If they do, then I start doing my interviews and start writing. Because you run the risk as a freelancer especially that if I gave them an 800-word article up front, they could very well ignore my email, take the writing and publish it. I mean, if they're bad. Yes. But it does happen to people. Like, people do get their work ripped off regularly. Sometimes you get situations as a freelancer where you pitch an idea, you hear nothing back, and then you see someone on staff writing the same thing. So you have to be very, like cards to your chest until the editor says yes. Which makes pitching even more difficult, which is why that extra information is so important, because you need to grab their attention. You know, if it takes 4 paragraphs to grab my attention, it takes a sentence to grab theirs. They want to know exactly what you're writing about, who you're going to talk to, and why it's relevant. Yeah. And you have barely any words to do that. Yeah. But yeah, I've never done I do know people that sometimes do that. I don't know of anyone having massive success with it. I think op-eds are different, or... you know, when you're doing kind of thought pieces where it's a personal essay, maybe, that might be a way to do it. But if you're doing kind of like a more feature-led piece, then yeah, pre-written work, I wouldn't want to run the risk, personally. And also if you write up and then they say, sorry, not this time. Yeah, that's so much time. And you've just spent all the time on it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. When it comes to like your interviews and quotes and things like that, say somebody included a quote in a press release, do you often lift that? Or would you say, cool, they sound interesting and I like what they have to say, I want to have a phone call with them? Yeah, I would always want to get my own quotes, because I personally think, and again, no shade, I just think it's a bit lazy to lift and not have that conversation yourself. Like, if you're being commissioned to write a piece, you should be at least making the effort to speak to these people and get your own answers. Yeah. to make sure that it's your work as well, because otherwise, if we wanted to make it that simple, then we would just copy and paste your press releases and make it into an article. That isn't that laborious to do. So yeah, quotes I think are really important to. It's also good to build a rapport with who you're writing about, because what you want is for them to see that published article and feel happy about it. Like that's a lot of weight that you feel when you're putting someone else's words and they're kind of trusting you with that. They don't get to see it before it goes live, and then suddenly it's everywhere. So yeah, quotes are such an intimate thing sometimes. You know, people really open up during interviews sometimes, and you have to be really careful with how you're putting their words across and in what manner you do that. So yeah, I think that also on the other side of things, what your agency thinks is a good quote wouldn't necessarily be what I think is a good quote. Yeah. Especially when I get to talk to multiple other people around the story, and I'm like, you know what, that isn't actually the thing here that we need to talk about. And as long as there's trust to be able to do that, then it always works out.
For sure. Maybe that's what your data says, and they're commenting on that. But actually the story and the angle that I want to take is different. So that's just not going to cut it. So just, I guess, if you have experts, try and have them ready to hop on a call and that kind of thing. And I imagine for the right outlet, people are willing to do that.
Yeah.
It's cool to be in the news.
Exactly.
I think. So, yeah. Provided people have the time, of course. The last thing I kind of want to touch on, and I'm not sure if you have much experience in this area, but it's a bit more about AI and just opinions around that, because that's a bit of a buzzword, and we've done a couple of episodes on AI specifically. But I asked the team, actually, I said, hey, I'm chatting to a journalist next week. What kind of things would you want to ask about? And somebody mentioned, you know, how has AI impacted what you do? Does it buy you more time to write stories? Does it feel like there's more pressure because editors expect quicker turnarounds? Wow. How do you feel?
So I will premise that when ChatGPT kind of became the thing that everyone can access like very easily, and then is it Gemini with Google, and you know, everywhere has their own kind of version of it. All I got told routinely was, oh, so you won't have a job in a few years then. It's like, well, actually. then I got stubborn, and I was like, okay, let's try and improve that. And if you ask ChatGPT to write an article, and even if you put all these people into it, they're just not going to get the same results. So like, I'm not worried about that side of things. And I think a lot of people try and bait especially content writers, or if you're a copywriter, they're constantly being baited out. Like I see posts on LinkedIn all the time. It's like, you know, if you don't want to be outrun by AI, this is what you need to do for your business. And I think it's so unhelpful. I don't think that AI will ever be able to replicate what I can do when I'm talking one-on-one with a person and spending an hour talking to them and getting to know them and writing something that's like very heartfelt. But equally, like, I think AI can be really helpful in the right setting. I know, not off the top of my head, but I do know that there's specific AI that's built for newsrooms to make fact-checking more robust, to make sure that we are kind of not giving into fake news headlines and such. And I think that's really helpful in that own realm. It's not something I've worked on or worked with, but I think it's very obvious when something has been written with AI to me. And it's a shame, because I do think that if you're using AI as a writer, you're kind of like letting yourself down quite a bit. Not let alone like the editors and everyone else that's given you a shot to write. You know, I feel very lucky that I get to call this my job. I know a lot of people would love to be able to be a writer and be a freelancer and kind of do what I do. But with that is a lot of responsibility to make sure that I'm doing it the proper way. And I would feel such deep shame using AI to write an article. Shame. Right? I just would. I don't think I'd be able to ever do that. It makes researching easier, I would say. I think when you've got like a huge data set, or there's something that you need like a quick fire answer on, yes, it can be helpful. But even then, I will go and triple check it, because I'm paranoid. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a tricky one. I don't think I've had enough experience like utilizing it in the way that it probably is useful. I also have done my own work on, like, you know, like I said, writing about sustainability and the health of the planet, and I know how bad it is for the planet. Yeah. So that kind of holds me back in equal parts. But also, you know, there's a lot of things, you know, I still write for the BBC as a contractor. If I were to ever be found out to be using AI to create content, that's just not okay.
Yeah.
Like there's I think people don't realise that there's a lot of risks associated with it. And I think it also is equally insulting when, as a writer, someone's like, oh, AI could have written that. And I'm like, okay, you give it a go then.
You ask ChatGPT to write that article and you tell me what you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I think ultimately still we're normal humans that reading things, like even if you can't necessarily tell looking at a couple of sentences, is that AI or not?
Yeah.
When you read a whole story, like the ones that you engage with the most or connect with the most are going to be ones written by other people that whatever have those experiences or knowledge on those things or are good writers and whatnot. I think potentially it might be more of a pressure as a staff writer in like a newsroom where efficiency is more of a hot topic. Like, can we proof this quicker? Can we do XYZ quicker? Yeah. But if you're a freelancer and you want to dedicate that time, like, then you should. And I think maybe we got a bit more scared of it at the beginning than we should. Yeah. Because it seemed like a huge revolution, and then in reality, it's not quite keeping pace in the way that that people thought.
I also think that I still don't know enough about it to make like a proper comment. I actually think that I've not utilised it enough. I don't know how it would look in my realm of work, but then equally, you know, you've got recently the amount of authors who have had their books taken by Meta to teach their own AI. If you're uploading your raw, unedited article to AI, in my head, I'm like, well, where's that going? Yeah. Is that being stored somewhere? So again, I think I'm not well versed enough in how it all works to utilize it. And I think I'm in a better position for that in my realm of work anyway. Yeah.
That's good. I think you need to be able to set your own boundaries.
For sure.
And your own sort of ethics when it comes to something like that, and not just feel like, oh, everyone's doing it, I need to do it as well. Yeah. Like, some people it's going to work really well for and it will really suit them. You know, some people love having their AI note takers and calls, and they're just obsessed. Like, every asset of their life, there's a way, or every aspect of their life, there's a way they can use it. But for some people, it just isn't the thing. Yeah. You know? But yeah, I wanted to ask that because it's something that we've been talking a lot about, and so it's kind of interesting to hear as a journalist, like, what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, so, for sure.
I'll be passing that on, or I'll just tell everyone they have to listen now. You have to listen to the end for the bit about, that's very clickbait. It's like, listen to the end to find out.
And it's me going, I don't know
anything, I'm not poised to say. That's fine. They'll be too far in at that point to know that they can come back out.
Such a honey drop.
Yeah, literally. But no, I think there's been loads of great stuff that we've talked about today, and it's really interesting to hear from somebody that's done both PR and journalism and gets both sides, because I'm sure that there are lots of journalists and PRs that don't really get the other side, and that can just be a bit of a barrier sometimes, even just the barrier to communication, or it can lead to a bit of frustration when you think, you know, why haven't you done that? Yeah. When actually there's a really clear reason, you just have to know what it is. So I appreciate you sharing all of your insights. I like to wrap up my episodes with a little round of this or that.
Oh, okay.
So usually we do PR this or that. This is my journalist this or that. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you two options or a series of two options, and you just tell me based on gut instinct what you would go with. Okay. You don't have to explain them, but normally there's always at least one that somebody does. So you're allowed one explanation. Okay. So the first one is phone interviews or written comments.
Phone interviews.
Breaking news or features.
Features. Print
publications or digital first outlets.
Digital first outlets. And I will caveat why. I grew up being in love with magazines, and I still love reading a physical newspaper. Like, I love that my dad buys the newspaper every day nearly, and especially the Saturday Times is his thing. So I love when I'm at his house and I get to flick through it. It feels very nostalgic. Yeah. But I think for the future of news and keeping everyone as informed as they should be, digital first publications are such a breath of fresh air in a lot of ways. I really rate the news movement is a great one. That kind of tapping into traditional news and storytelling for a new age audience and combining it all together, I just think is so smart and so needed.
I think so, and I think if you're going to appeal to that market or a certain demographic, being online is the way to do that.
Yeah.
I know I definitely fall under that category. I'm also have that same experience of there's always a newspaper at home.
Yeah.
Like if I'm ever doing like arts and crafts,
Yes.
there'll always be newspaper.
Yeah.
But I can't think of the last time I actually purchased a newspaper.
Yeah.
So interesting. Nice caveat. The next one is LinkedIn or Substack.
Substack.
I felt that one coming. And then notebook and pen or voice memo and phone.
Oh, it really depends. Voice memo, I actually can't answer that. Because
Pass.
Because it'll be a voice memo if I'm interviewing. Or if I'm
True.
getting that. But my personal, how I get everything out is notebook and pen.
Fair enough.
I buy myself a Moleskine every year as like my own journal, like work journal.
Yeah.
And then I have a personal journal as well. I am the notebook queen. Like I've got too many filled notebooks that I've never like parted ways with them.
That's so nice though, because I feel like in 30 years time or like 50 years time you'll have these keepsakes of you know, a time when everything was so digital and we won't have like record of that. So I'm into that. I like that, but I feel like I never write things down. Like, you know, when you come back from the school holidays and you try and write something, you're like, is this the right hand? Like that's how I feel when I write things down. I need to do more of that. So I like a bit of both.
Yeah.
And then finally, deadline pressure or writer's block.
Oh God.
Neither.
You know what? Deadline pressure.
Fairs.
Because I work so much better under pressure. I'm a queen procrastinator. So if anything, the deadline pressure is more of a positive. Writer's block is so frustrating.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many walks you do or how much you change your routine. Some days you just cannot get the words out. And then the next day you look at the page again and you're like, it's there.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Go.
If you're lucky the next day.
Yeah. If only it was so simple.
Yeah.
I like that. No, it's cool. Interesting to see how that varies from other people you've spoken to. What I might do is like in however many episodes time is like do a compilation or a comparison of what people have said. It's quite interesting to see. Another one I ask like when I'm talking to PRs is like in-person meetings or virtual.
Oh, yeah.
What would you say for that?
In person.
Yeah, that's a real 50-50 one.
Yeah, virtual's so much easier. I get that. But in person, like being able to make a proper thing of it and like go and get a coffee or a lunch together and like have that human interaction. I always leave those meetings being like, oh, that's why I do that.
Yeah.
Like it always feels so much more rewarding and positive rather than just like, oh, right, I've got 10 minutes to hop on a Zoom call. Neither of you are really that engaged as you could be in person, I think. So
less like transactional.
Yeah.
It feels like
human.
equally valuable, but there's different things you can get from each. Interesting.
Definitely.
I'll add that to the poll and report back with my findings, including all of the sources linked, which would just be the podcast. But yeah, I think that's all we have time for today. I really, really appreciate you coming and chatting to me. Some really, really great insights there and things that I think both journalists and PRs can learn from. So doing your bit for the industry.
No, thank you
and
so
my
much.
pool of listeners. But yeah, of course, you can find Ria on LinkedIn, but also her newsletter on Substack. She's also got a website, riawolstenholme.com. I'll link all of this so you can find it and connect with her, see what she's up to, see what articles she's writing. As always, you can follow the podcast wherever it is that you're listening to this. And don't forget to give myself and Distinctly a follow on LinkedIn as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was so much fun.